Welcome to The Know. I'm Ashley Jenkins, and the final installment in Peter Jackson's Hobbit trilogy hits theaters next week, unless you're part Hobbit yourself, since New Zealand already got it, you lucky ducks. If you haven't seen the first two installments, or if you just need a refresher on what happened, we've got you covered. Here's everything you need to know about The Hobbit, The War of the Five Armies before you go. The Hobbit trilogy is based on the well-known youth-friendly fantasy novel The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien and acts as a prequel to The Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson's previous trilogy set in the world of Middle-earth. The movie stars Sir Ian McKellen as the wizard Gandalf, reprising his role from the original trilogy, and other familiar faces make appearances as well, including Cate Blanchett as Galadriel, Hugo Weaving as Elrond, Christopher Lee as Saruman, and Orlando Bloom as Legolas. Of course, this is also its own story, and so has its own cast of characters led by Martin Freeman, who plays the titular Hobbit, Bilbo Baggins. In the first movie, we joined Bilbo, the complacent Hobbit who was tricked into a great adventure by Gandalf and a band of 12 dwarves on a quest to return to their ancestral home, the Lonely Mountain, which was claimed years ago by a dragon called Smaug, who in the films is played by Freeman's Sherlock buddy Benedict Cumberbatch. And so it began. The trilogy includes not only elements from The Hobbit, but also some additional side stories and elements from Tolkien's other work, The Silmarillion, which functions largely as world building and history for Middle-earth. One of these side plots is that of the Necromancer, a sorcerer who has corrupted Greenwood using dark magic. Aside from the omission of fan-favorite character Tom Bombadil, the plot largely follows The Hobbit, as Bilbo's quick thinking saves the dwarves from a group of trolls by stalling until the sun comes up, turning them to stone. Among the trolls' discarded loot, they find blades that will help them greatly, particularly Bilbo, who's given the elven shortsword Sting, which glows blue when near orcs. The company journeys to Rivendell, home of the elves, where Lord Elrond assists them in learning of the secret door in the Lonely Mountain that will allow the dwarves access. From there, the company travels into the Misty Mountains, where they're captured by goblins. Bilbo, who becomes separated from the group, falls into a cave where he meets another familiar figure from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Gollum, who at this point in history is in possession of the One Ring that will end up causing so much trouble. Bilbo picks it up and escapes from Gollum when he learns that the ring makes him invisible. He meets up with the dwarves, who stage an escape from the goblins with the assistance of Gandalf, and that's where the first movie ends, with a glimpse of the Lonely Mountain in the distance and the dragon Smaug awakening. The second movie picks up with the wizard, hobbit, and dwarves pursued by an orc with a serious grudge against the dwarven prince Thorin Oakenshield for cutting off his arm. Gandalf takes the party to the home of the bear shapeshifter Bjorn, who assists them to the edge of Mirkwood, where Gandalf discovers a clue relating to the Necromancer subplot, forcing him to depart and leave the party to get through without him. Of course, they get into a heap of trouble and are ensnared by giant spiders, and it's up to Bilbo to rescue them with the help of his new invisibility ring, which he's beginning to learn doesn't come without consequences. Luckily, wood elves turn up and chase off the rest of the spiders, except they also take the dwarves prisoner. Once again, it's Bilbo to the rescue, who hatches a plan that sees the dwarves escape down the river in wine barrels. They're pursued by both orcs and wood elves and elude them, though one of the dwarves, Keely, is injured by a Morgul arrow shaft. The dwarves sneak into the town of Esgaroth with the help of a boatman named Bard, who, as it turns out, is in possession of the last black arrow capable of killing Smaug. The dwarves, minus the injured Keely, leave the town with a whole lot of fanfare and set off for the Lonely Mountain, where they successfully find the hidden entrance, and Bilbo sets off inside to steal the Arkenstone, the royal jewel of the Dwarf Kingdom, which he eventually does, though he pockets it instead of returning it to Thorin. He encounters the dragon, who reveals the return of Sauron, who was thought to be defeated, and after a humdinger of an action sequence in which the dwarves try to smother Smaug in gold, the dragon flies off toward Lake Town to wreck the joint. Back at Lake Town, the orcs that tracked the dwarves' flight from the wood elves catch up to Keely, but the elves Tauriel and Legolas catch up to them, and Keely and Tauriel kindle a bit of an elf-on-dwarf romance. Bard attempts to arm the town's launcher with the black arrow, but is arrested and leaves the arrow to his son to hide. Off in the Necromancer's subplot, Gandalf discovers the Nazgul crypt's empty and is ambushed by orcs in the ruins of Dol Guldur, and is overcome by the Necromancer, who, it turns out, is none other than Sauron himself. As he's captured, an army of orcs sets out towards the Lonely Mountain. And that brings us up to date. Smaug is bearing down on Lake Town, the orcs are headed for the Lonely Mountain, and it all looks pretty bleak. Based on the trailers, things get much worse when Thorin, overcome by greed, sets himself against orcs, elves, humans, and more. So you can bet the action is going to be pretty freaking epic. Will you see The Hobbit when it hits theaters? And what do you think of Jackson's efforts in adapting a single book into a complete movie trilogy? Let us know in the comments. Remember, you get the best in video games and entertainment right here, so make sure you like this video and subscribe to this channel and we'll keep you in the know.